6:39, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Appreciate you listening to Nashville's Morning News. Man, do we have a lot going on. And one of the things that I find interesting is, as we go through the news cycle, is all of the, I'm just going to be honest with you, all of the absolute blatant lies that we see Kamala Harris telling out on the campaign trail. And I want to welcome on into the program Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, always great to have you on. I want to go through a couple of things very quickly. We were having some fun with this earlier, but I'm sure you saw the story where Kamala Harris, she is using yet another fake accent as she is in Detroit, and she's talking to the unions there. Listen close.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
I mean, I got to tell you, Jonathan, the more that I hear that, just the more disgusting it sounds, because she's obviously pandering. But it's almost like, well, if you can't even trust her to be honest about who she is, how can you trust anything she says?
Exactly. And I think it's so embarrassing when you hear that. This is somebody running for president. And it also just shows sort of such a disregard or lack of respect for the audience that she is degrading them by speaking to them that way. And it really just exemplifies how this whole campaign has been run, is like they don't care about the American public. They think they're morons and they just pander here and pander there. But I hope the media asks her something about this, because it is like, what are you doing? You know, if you put Donald Trump in any setting, you get Donald Trump. You don't get the, Southern Donald Trump or anything else. You get Donald Trump. When he spoke to the black journalist, it was Donald Trump. And it just shows, I think when people look for a leader in anything, not just politics, but in business or a coach or anything, they're looking for somebody that's authentic. And because that shows you a lot about somebody, that if you're going to be that dishonest, like you said, about who you are, how can you trust them about anything else? And I don't even think she knows who she is, because it's basically she's just pandering and just sort of this manufactured candidacy, whatever the heck it is. But my guess is she practiced that, which is really the insulting thing, because I think they showed a similar speech. I think she gave at Pittsburgh or somewhere like earlier in the day, where she wasn't speaking the same way. And it's like, this is so insulting to the American people, but this whole campaign should insult the American people.
Well, Jonathan, it's funny. Jonathan, it's funny you should mention that. This is how she sounded in Pittsburgh.
Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave. Thank unions for your vacation time.
I mean, you're right, Jonathan. She didn't have the fake accent in Pittsburgh that she did in Detroit. And so I would love for Donald Trump to do a test. Can you imagine if Donald Trump went to Detroit and spoke in an accent like that? Oh, could you imagine the hue and cry from the left?
Yeah, it's amazing. They would be calling him racist. They would be, doing all the, the standard tricks, how he's, pandering to them, insulting the audience, all of these things that he thinks the audience isn't sophisticated and other things. And it's just the whole thing is such an insult. And we all know, or your listeners certainly know, she grew up in Berkeley, California, and then Montreal. She had probably one of the most privileged and pampered upbringings that anyone probably that's ever walked the earth has ever had. And to play these games, it's just pathetic. And, the American people deserve an actual election where they get honest candidates talking about issues, not this complete nonsense that you get out of the Harris campaign. They don't even campaign every day, but every time they campaign. Right. And it's like, I hope the media holds them accountable. And she, the little game she played with this Dana Bash interview, and like that's supposed to be gets her through the entire election cycle, is such a joke that this is actually even going on in this country.
Jonathan Fahey is joining us. Last night, Jonathan, this was heard. This is dispatch calling out law enforcement to an apartment complex in the Chicago area, the south side of Chicago.
Unit 10-3, I'm citywide person with a gun, 6124 South King Drive. Callers says 32 Venezuelans are trespassing the building. showing guns in the courtyard, and they have motorcycles in the courtyard as well. All stairwells are filled. Nothing further is unclear.
All right, so as you just heard, dispatch south side of Chicago saying that 32 migrants were at this particular apartment building. They had guns, they had motorcycles, and they were trespassing. A lot of folks out there in Chicago saying that Venezuelan migrants had taken over this apartment building. I have not seen anything since then, but it wouldn't surprise me if the local media was trying to cover this up, just like I think they're covering it up in Aurora. What's your sense of all this? I feel like the people that are saying, well, there's no Venezuelan gangs that are taking over apartment complexes. I think really what they're doing is they're just playing semantics, because there's no doubt that we have these Venezuelan gangs here.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just semantics, and you're right. They do everything they can to downplay, illegal immigrant crime at all, so that they're going to do everything they can to, change the topic and other stuff. I mean, you see it whenever, there's an illegal alien arrested for a serious crime. They never refer to them as an illegal alien. They'll call them Houston man or some other euphemism to distract the public. But I think, the thing in Colorado is pretty scary. And I think at first the reaction of the media was to totally act like it wasn't happening. But I think, the reality is they have to deal with this. And the other part of it is they can't acknowledge the truth, which is they invited, meaning the Democratic Party and the Biden administration, invited these gangs in here, invited massive amounts of illegal aliens, and they didn't care whether or not they were in gangs, whether they're terrorists or anything else. They want as many illegal aliens into the country, and they do everything they can to incentivize it. And I think you talked about it, fairly recently, when, Nancy Pelosi's comments on the Bill Maher show, supporting $150,000 for illegal aliens to participate in a program that gives $150,000 as down payments to new homeowners.
Yep.
And, all of these things incentivize it. And there was this New York Post article, which I think was interesting. I think it was last week, that talked about the cost just last year for illegal aliens to the taxpayers, not to mention all these societal costs, was $150 billion.
Yep.
And, that's probably undercounting, because a lot of schools and stuff, it's hard to get data on how many illegal alien kids are there. So you think of that, and you think of the other costs are, the things that American people are giving up for this is they're getting lesser medical care, because when they come in, you can't just throw more money at it. They don't come in with doctors, they don't come in with hospitals, they don't come in with brand new schools and teachers. So the American students that are in overcrowded classrooms and things like that, they suffer, and they don't get to recover that by just writing a check or anything else. But, the Democratic Party and the Biden administration has invited this, and we all know why they're doing it. And, so they always try to avoid discussing the cost. But it's also interesting that the costs are always borne by the people that,
Yep.
With that rally yesterday that Kamala Harris is talking about, the middle class. Well, the middle class suffers the most because of this policy, because of, rising prices and lower wages and all these things. So they don't really care about the middle class. The Democratic Party and the Democratic candidates only care about the Democratic Party. They don't care about the American people. They put illegal aliens are probably one of the most powerful, maybe behind the teachers' unions. The illegal alien constituency apparently seems to be one of the most powerful constituencies in Washington, because the Democrats will never criticize them. They'll lie about it repeatedly. They'll promote false narratives. They talk in euphemisms. It's so unbelievably disgraceful. But what do? I guarantee you these Venezuelan gang members in Colorado, they're not going to get deported under this administration. And that's the thing people should follow. Even if they get arrested, where do they go? What will happen to them? Because I bet I would bet they stay in the country, or at least overwhelmingly most of them stay in the country.